Welcome to South Asia Maps. This is J. Reddy, your facilitator. At South Asia Maps, we endeavor to bring you the fascinating culture, heritage, geography, history of the land south of Karakoram and north of Kanyakumari and west of Kamarupa and east of Kutch to you in the form of maps, icons, pictures and images. This is, our continuation of our previous talks on Punjab, the land of 5 rivers, a very fascinating the land on the planet Earth. In the last presentations, I discussed about the British Punjab as a political entity from 1849 to 1947 partition times 100 and its 5 districts and divisions. And in this presentation, we look at Punjab before British Punjab. That is, I call it, Ranjit Singh's Punjab. When we talk about Punjab, there are various nuances of Punjab we have to keep in mind. The cultural Punjab that lies east side of the Khyber Pass until the Yamuna or Jamuna River. This is a cultural Punjab south of Shivalik mountains and north of Thar desert and western side of the mountains, Balochistan mountains. Linguistic Punjab, we can say there are the land geographical areas that just speak Punjabi language or various dialects of Punjabi language like the Malwa and Pawad and Punjabi and Majha and Multani or Saraiki or Potwari or Hindko languages and Bahawalpuri and so on. That is linguistic Punjab. And various dialects like Dogri, Kangri and so on. So we have a nuance of cultural Punjab from Khyber Pass to Delhi, and we have linguistic Punjab, and we can say about political, based upon the political governance, Mughal Punjab or the British Punjab, now East Punjab and West Punjab and so on. So after Mughal Punjab, we have contested Punjab and Khalsa Raj also ruled before that. And after 1799 or 1801, Ranjit Singh started consolidating Punjab as a major political entity, and that's what the story about today. In this story, that is Ranjit Singh's Punjab, which was at peak 1839. In the summer, Maharaja passed away. It was a normal death, and he ruled like a Maharaja of Punjab from Lahore on the river Ravi nearly for 40 years. He is the Sheri Punjab, the Lion of Punjab, who built Punjab step by step, brick by brick. So in this episode, we'll talk about the significance of Third Battle of Panipat in 1761 and the contest among the Afghan Duranis and Marathas from Deccan and the declining Mughals and awaiting the British East India Company from the Bengal, that is also, and his homeland or his Watan or his principality called Misl, that is a Persian word, means a small principality area, Sukerchakia Misl, that is round about Gujranwala district where the Maharaja was born. And we'll introduce you the concept of Cis-Sutlej states and Trans-Sutlej states. Sutlej is the major, the political boundary between the Maharaja's kingdom in the north and west, and south is the British East India Company's paramountcy or suzerainty, and Sikh Confederacy or Misl rule, and the wars among these Misls and inter-Misl wars, and 1809 Treaty of Amritsar, that is the first Treaty of Amritsar, between Maharaja and British representative Charles Metcalfe and Ochterlony, and the battles of Kasur, Battle of Attock, Battle of Multan, Battle of Kashmir, that is Battle of Shopian, east of Pir Panjal Mountains, and various governor generals that overlapped during Maharaja Ranjit Singh time. Briefly, Lord Amherst and then William Bentinck, here Charles Metcalfe briefly, and Lord Auckland. It is Auckland time, Maharaja passed away. And after the death of Maharaja Ellenborough, and next followed by Lord Hardinge I, during whose regime, that means he was the Governor General of Presidency of Bengal, Fort Williams, and first Anglo-Sikh War fought during the winter of 1845 and 46. Then a couple of treaties, and finally Dalhousie, under whose regime the second Sikh War fought, and the kingdom was annexed to the East India Company's territories. And we look at the various geographical area of the present Punjab and East Punjab, Indian Punjab, that's Purbi Punjab, Haryana, that is historically part of Punjab, and Himachal Pradesh, historically part of Punjab, and compare with the British Punjab and all those things. So that is going to be a brief, the overall panoramic view of what this talk will bring to you. After this talk, you will have a solid understanding of the events and major political military developments that has happened and before the annexation of Maharaja's kingdom, that is Khalsa Sarkar, to the British East India Company territories. Excuse me. The Battle of Panipat that happened in 1761. The battle was contested by the Duranis and their Mussalman allies in the Indo-Gangetic plains, like Rohilla Sardars ruling at Rohilakand and Farrukhabad, and Sujawuddawla of Awadh. And the major adversaries were the Marathas from Deccan, the Peshwas representatives ruling from Pune, led by Sadasivarao Baho as a generalissimo, and the Jats of Haryana and surrounding areas, Rajputs of Rajputana, and the Sikhs in Punjab, they just remained neutral, and the fiercely fought Battle of Panipat in January 1761 resulted severe defeat of Marathas. But Durrani, Ahmad Shah Durrani, who won a great battle as a Pyrrhic victory, that means he didn't achieve anything, he didn't establish an empire, excuse me, like Babur did in 1526. He just went back to his mountainous Durrani kingdom at Kandahar, and a great political vacuum followed. In this political vacuum, the Sikhs were already contesting in Punjab and formed various small kingdoms called misls, or principalities. There are nearly a dozen of them, and like Pulkian Misl in the Haryana Punjab border, today's East Punjab, and Bhangi Misl, and Nakai Misl, Ahulwalia Misl, Ramgharia Misl, and one of such misl is Sukerchakia. That Sukerchakia Misl, and Ranjit Singh's father Mahan Singh was the ruler. It is across the river Ravi. This is river Ravi, and this is Chenab, and Sialkot will be somewhere here, and Jammu Tawi will be somewhere here. And is a small misl, and Ranjit Singh, who was born in round about 1780 or so, he became the successor, and he established and he conquered Lahore during the turmoil period when Ahmad Shah Abdali's grandson Jaman Shah was unsuccessful in invading Punjab and reaching Delhi, he went back in the turmoil and he occupied Lahore and declared himself Maharaja. Slowly start building the kingdom. By the time 1803, after Treaty of Bassein between the Peshwa Bajirao II and East India Company in Bombay, and Second Maratha War happened, and the British became the masters of this region called Cis-Sutlej region. This is the Sutlej River. Cis means this side. Trans means across. So it is again a confusing. What is cis? What is trans? If you place Peshawar as a base, then this is a Cis-Sutlej, then this is a Trans-Sutlej. But because the most important thing is the Delhi, the capital of Hindustan, and most of the authors place this as a pinpointing. So cis means towards this side of the region. Trans means across. That's what you have to keep in mind. So Cis-Sutlej states and Trans-Sutlej states, there are a lot of missoils, regions and kingdoms across the Sutlej, that is Trans-Sutlej. And were also a lot of kingdoms and small like Patiala, Nabha, Jind, and so on, Daulat Rao, Sindhia's territories, and so on. These are Cis-Sutlej states. So that is about Cis-Sutlej states and Trans-Sutlej states. And Ranjit Singh occupied Lahore, this region. This is the Jalandhar region called Bist Do. Bist means Bias and Sutlej, the word. Dwaba means interflow, the land between two rivers. So Sutlej River, Bias Rivers joins at Harik, a place called Harik in Taran district or Amritsar district. And this is a Bist Doab or Jalandhar Doab. He occupied that and then crossed the Sutlej and start integrating, and a lot of kingdoms, and a small ruler, Misaldars there, they were afraid and they were not interested to come under the Maharaja's kingdom. They appealed for the protection from the East India Company Bahadur. At that time, the Governor General of East India Company was Lord Amherst. Lord Amherst succeeded Lord Wellesley. I think Lord Wellesley, after the Maratha War, Second War, he demitted the office in 1805 or so. So, briefly, there was other Governor General succeeded. I think Lord Amherst became the Governor General 1807 or so. He has a 5-year term, I guess, and 1813 or so he demitted. During that time, he accepted their request and sent a military mission. Already, this region was under the control of East India Company because this was Sindhia's territory. He has given back. He lost the war in the Second Maratha War. Vacharloni was sent with a major army to resist the invasions or wars of Ranjit Singh across Sutlej. And at the same time, Charles Metcalfe was sent as a diplomat, and he met Maharaja Ranjit Singh, and both of them negotiated and resulted in Treaty of Amritsar. Treaty of Amritsar was made in 1809. That is 30 years before Maharaja died. That what does the Treaty of Amritsar? We call it the Treaty of Amritsar, Amritsar 1. Treaty of Amritsar 2, that was made between East India Company Bahadur and Jammu ruler Gulab Singh after Sikhs got defeated in the first Anglo-Sikh War. That is very different. That resulted in declaration of a kingdom of Jammu and Kashmir under the rule of Maharaja Gulab Singh Dogra. That's not what we are discussing. This is the first Treaty of Amritsar between Maharaja Ranjit Singh and East India Company Bahadur, negotiated by Metcalfe. And according to the treaty, Maharaja will not venture south of Sutlej, that will the border between East India Company Bahadur and Ranjit Singh territories. In a sense, the treaty was also not totally bad. It gives a solid freedom for Maharaja Ranjit Singh to conquer the territories on the other side of the Sutlej, that is called Trans-Sutlej states or Trans-Sutlej territories, like the Kasur, Nawab of Kasur, and Nawab of Multan, and Duranis in Peshawar, and various other the hill rajas in this mountainous region. That means he has a freedom. British will not interfere. And Maharaja should not cross Sutlej. Maharaja has certain territories south of Sutlej. They were terminated, but essentially the Sutlej was the boundary. Treaty of Amritsar, that is. Then that was around about 1809, and within few years in the he fought Battle of Kasur. Kasur is near Lahore. This is the Ravi River. This is the Ravi River. This is the Ravi River. This is the Ravi River, and Lahore will be somewhere here, and because this is the Bias and Sutlej, Saraiki here, Ravi, near Kasur. Nawab of Kasur was under the nominal control of Duranis. When Shah Ahmad Shah Abdali, the victor of Panipat III, passed away in 1772, his second son, Taimur Shah, succeeded. He moved his capital from Kandahar to Kabul, and his winter capital used to be Peshawar. And various Muslim rulers of Kasur and Bawalpur and Talpur Nawabs in Sindh and Nawabs in Baluchistan were under his nominal control, as the Durrani Empire was loosely organized east of the Khyber Pass and declining. And so he conquered the Kasur, and then he also conquered Attock. Attock is a very historic town on the bank of River Indus. That means when you are coming from Kandahar and Kabul, and you Jalalabad, and you cross Khyber Pass and enter into Ajamred Fort, then Peshawar Basin and Charsadda, and you cross Attock on Sindhu River, and you enter into Potwar Plateau and cross the Jhelum River and enter into Chasdob, then you cross into Gujranwala and enter into Lahore. So he conquered Attock, the historic city of Attock, and at Battle of Attock. I think it's around about 1813 or so, I don't remember exactly. And then Battle of Multan. There was a Nawab in Multan. Multan is this region. It is between where the Sutlej River meets a combined streams of Chenab River, that is Ravi and Jhelum, at a place called Uchseri. This the Multan will be somewhere here. It was under the Muslim ruler and Nawab, and it was conquered by Ranjit Singh. That was a major victory, Battle of Multan. Then Battle of Kashmir came in 1819, and the army crossed the Pir Panjal mountains, and when you cross the Pir Panjal mountains, there is a town called Shopian, that is near Anantnag. From Indian territory, you can cross the Pir Panjal mountains to Banihal Pass, but Pakistani side, at this side, West Punjab, you can cross easily and enter Shopian. Battle of Shopian or Battle of Kashmir was found. The valley came under the control of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. Then Maharaja Ranjit Singh fought Battle of Peshawar, crossing the Indus River, and the Nawabs of Peshawar, which were under loose control of Durrani rulers at Kabul, came under the control of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. And within few years after the Battle of Peshawar, he completely annexed it. Previously they were vassals or tributaries, acknowledged the leadership of Maharaja Ranjit Singh at Lahore. Now it became a part of territory. And then what happened in the various rulers succeeded in Durrani Empire, and there was a virtually civil war. One of the sons of Taimur Shah, that is grandson of Ahmad Shah Abdali, the victor of Battle of Panipat in 1761, called Shah Shuja, he was kicked out of power in Kabul, or dethroned, deposed. He came and resided in Attock for some time, and finally he came and resided at Ludhiana. Ludhiana is in an area called Punjab Malwa, that is Firozpur, Faridkot, Ludhiana, Barnala, and all those Malerkota regions. Ludhiana was under the control of British East India Company Bahadur. He resided in Ludhiana as a guest of British East India Company. Yet British has interest in Afghania, which was under the control of Durranis. Because from the north, the Russian Empire was colonizing and conquering lot of Khanates, that is Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan. It touched the border of Yamuna River, that is the traditionally boundary between northern Afghanistan, north of Hindu Kush mountains like Balkh and Kunduz, Mazari, Sharif and so on. So they wanted a buffer territory, and they have very good catch in the form of Shah Shuja, who was the ruler of Durrani Empire for few years, and now he is a resident after his deposition in East India Company territory. So British approached Maharaja Ranjit Singh and formed a tripartite alliance. The alliance between the Khalsa Darbar and British East India Company and a claimant to the Durrani throne, Shah Shuja. According to the alliance, British marshalled a very big army south of Sutlej River at Firozpur, but Maharaja was very clear that British cannot move his armed forces, their armed forces, through the Khalsa Raj territory. Easiest way from Ludhiana to go to the traditional invaders' route is the Ludhiana, Jalandhar, Lahore and Gujranwala, Gujarat, Wazirabad and Zeelam, and cross the Potwar Plateau, Rawalpindi, then enter Attock and go to Naushera, Charsadda, Peshawar, Jamrud and Torkam and cross the Khyber Pass, Jalalabad and Kabul. That is the easiest and shortest way. But Maharaja didn't agree for that. So tripartite alliance was built in the final months of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. I think it was 1839 beginning, during the reign of Lord Auckland, in whose regime first Afghan war fought. And the large army assembled and it marched through the Bahawalpur and Sindh and finally Kozak and Bolan Pass, and Bolan Pass you climb the mountains, reach Quetta, and again cross the Kozak Pass and enter into the plains of Afghania. Finally reach Kandahar and reach Kabul and fight a war, and Shuja was established. That means army of British moved to different north to the Khalsa territory. That's important. And Maharaja Ranjit Singh passed away meanwhile, and the Afghan in the Afghania, the British has the initial great victory, and finally they failed, and Shah Shuja was overthrown and assassinated. Vast British army retreated. At that time, the retreat came through the Punjab. Meanwhile, the Punjab fell into anarchy. The ruler of that time, after the death of Ranjit Singh, was Karak Singh for a few months. Then his grandson, now Nihal Singh. Then his wife, Chand Kaur, was the regent. And finally, for 2-3 years, Sher Singh was the Maharaja. During the Sher Singh regime, 1942, the army came back. That it was very clear that the Sikh kingdom, Khalsa Raj, compromised with their sovereignty and territorial integrity. Anyway, the army came back, the British army. The anarchy continued and finally the Khalsa becomes very powerful. Khalsa army, they were out of the control of the Sikh rulers, and a lot of wazirs were assassinated, like the Maharaja Sher Singh was assassinated, and his son Pratap Singh, heir apparent, and prominent wazir who was the Diwan, the Prime Minister of the Sikh Khalsa kingdom for nearly 25 years, means in quarter century. Dan Singh Dogra was assassinated. His son, successor Diwan Hira Singh was assassinated. Then his successor Jawahar Singh was also assassinated. Essentially, Khalsa kingdom descended into anarchy, and British strengthened their cantonment forces at Ambala and Ludhiana and Firozpur, and eventually the war was initiated by the the Khalsa unruly army, and they were defeated, and that is a different story. So that is the first war, and within 2-3 years second war came, and Dalhousie decided to annex the Khalsa kingdom. Now let's compare the areas of the the areas, that how much area it has. Wikipedia gives that Maharaja Ranjit Singh has a territory has areas around about 491 square kilometers, thousand, but I don't think so. Let's say the present partition India is around about 3,000 square kilometers. That means you can say less 3,000. Actually, the government claims it is 3,200,000, but there is a dispute between Aksai Chin Kashmir. So after taking that in consideration, around about 3,000 units. If the area of the India is 3,000, the British Punjab has 350. Out of 3,000, 350 means around about 12% of at that time. When you say British Punjab, we are talking about the entire British Punjab, plus princely states like Bahawalpur, Patiala, Jind, and Chamba, and Simla states, all those things together. Because of Maharaja Ranjit Singh territory was north of Sutlej, you have to subtract. Bahawalpur was south of Sutlej, that is Bahawalpur, Bahawalnagar, Rahimyar Khan. These districts were under the control of Bahawalpur Nawabs. So this is around about 40,000 or so. And Haryana is around about 45,000, and Malwa around about 20,000. And there is also a lot of Himachal region was not under the control of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, except Kangra district. Chamba was not there, Bashar was not under his control, Suket and Mandi were not under control. But the Khyber Pashtun region was under his control. That is Hazara district and Peshawar district and Kohat district, Banu district, Ismail Khan. So you get around about 50, 60, 70k in this area. But Jammu was under his control, and Kashmir was also under control. But vast territory was mountainous, Ladakh, and it was loosely controlled. That means we can claim, but essentially I feel that Maharaja Ranjit Singh kingdom has essentially a similar area like British East India Company, more or less around about 350,000 square kilometers. Right? That is, when you take today's India around about 3,000 square kilometers, and Pakistan 800,000 square kilometers, and East Pakistan or Bangladesh around about 150,000 square kilometers becomes 3,000. That means South Asia becomes, instead of 3,000 square kilometers to 4,000 square kilometers. That means 4 million square kilometers. India 3 million, and Pakistan, that is alienated territories. That means alienated from the native land by Islamic imperialism, because they are converted Muslims. So they get alienated. They don't want to live with the Kafirs, their co-brothers, their parent body. That's how Islam operates. That's a different story. That means Ranjit Singh controlled, let's say, 350 to 400,000 square kilometers. That means 0.4 million square kilometers. If the South Asia, south of Khyber Pass is 4,000, so he controlled around about 10% of the land. At that time, there were around about, Wikipedia gives 12 million people, population at that time, when Ranjit Singh died 1839. So that means it's a very big kingdom, the vast kingdom. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, to put the things in a historical perspective about Ranjit Singh's Punjab. That is a predecessor to a British Punjab. And so essentially today we discussed about Ranjit Singh's, Maharaja Ranjit Singh's territory, Khalsa Sarkar, that survived nearly 50 years from 1799 or 1800s to 1849, before annexation by Lord Dalhousie, the Governor General of the Presidency of Fort Williams. That is a longish name for Presidency of Bengal. That means essentially Governor General of British Territories, India. And we talked about the historic Third Battle of Panipat, 1761, between Durrani and their Musalman Gangetic Plain allies like Rohillas, Najibuddaulah, Najib Khan, and Nawabs of Farrukhabad and Shujabuddaulah, the Awadh ruler at Faizabad or Lucknow, and in which the Marathas from Deccan received a severe jolt. The resulting political vacuum in the Indo-Gangetic plains was not filled by the victor, Ahmad Shah Abdali, who went back to Kabul, and political vacuum followed. And in Punjab, lot of missiles took over the land informally. There were nearly a dozen of them. One among them was small Sukerchakia Misl between the river Ravi and between the rivers Chenab. That is the headquarters at Gujranwala. That is a town south side of Sialkot. Sialkot itself is south side of Jammu, Sialkot and Gujranwala. He built the kingdom step by step. In 1800 or so, nearly he declared himself Maharaja of Lahore, Punjab, by conquering Lahore city, and then slowly start annexing the territories west of Sutlej River, that is Trans-Sutlej missiles, and he ventured into south to conquer the Cis-Sutlej territories. British intervened and sent Metcalfe as a mission, and the Treaty of Amritsar delimited the territories of Maharaja. Other side, that is trans side of the Sutlej, that means the west side of Sutlej or right hand side of Sutlej, as move along Sutlej, right hand side. And Maharaja fought various battles like Battle of Kasur, defeated Nawab of Kasur, south of Lahore, then Battle of Attock and Indus, and Battle of Multan, defeated in the Saraiki speaking Punjabi area Multan Nawab, and Battle of Shopian, Battle of Kashmir, and Battle of Peshawar. And before few months of his death, a tripartite alliance was made between the Khalsa Darbar of Ranjit Singh and British East India Company, and a pretender to the Kabul throne, Shah Shuja, but British army didn't pass through Maharaja's territories. It passed through the Dithud, through Sindh and so on, and it has received a crushing defeat and came back through the Maharaja's territories. And after the death, the Sikh Khalsa Darbar descended into anarchy, and two Sikh wars were fought, and finally kingdom was annexed to the British East India Company territories. So the British Punjab has around about 350,000 square kilometers, 0.3 million square kilometers. Maharaja's territory has more or less the same, maybe a little more, like 0.4 million. That is nearly 10% of the geographical area of today's South Asia, south of Khyber Pass. Thank you very much for listening, and we appreciate your feedback, as usual, compliments, criticisms, and suggestions. And at South Asia, I endeavor to bring you the vast knowledge, my 4 decades of serious studies on a serious student of Indian geography, history, culture, and heritage to you in the form of icons, maps, and images. This is your facilitator, J. Reddy, and see you soon in the next episode of our fascinating journey on Punjab, the land of 5 rivers, the land of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, the land of Dharma Gurus. Thank you.